One woman ended up becoming the latest viral Karen after her road rage got the best of her on the 4th of July holiday in 2024. Footage of the incident, which first appeared on Reddit, showed the enraged motorist verbally accosting a male driver, who recorded the bizarre outburst with his phone as the woman yelled at him for spinning and swerving on the road while she had an 82-year-old passenger in her car. The man filming the video seemed confused as he asked the woman what she was talking about. With noticeably slurred speech, she called him an inappropriate name and said that just because it was the 4th of July, it didn't mean he could act a certain way. In response, the man accused the seemingly intoxicated woman of being the one who was swerving on the road and driving erratically. During the confrontation, the woman's car began to slowly roll away. She realized she had forgotten to put it in park and immediately dropped the argument as she chased after the runaway vehicle. The woman could be seen frantically trying to put her foot on the brake as the car bumped into an SUV, causing the open driver's side door to whip backwards and nearly slam into her leg. She seemed shocked and like she didn't know what to say as she tried to explain the situation to the driver of the SUV that her car had just hit. The three drivers all eventually decided to move on with their day. As the woman pulled away from the scene, a fresh, large dent could be seen in her car door. The incident appeared to happen in Florida, but the identities of the parties involved are unknown and it's unclear whether any arrests were made. Number 17. Richard Curtis. On what began as an ordinary evening in October of 2024, a man entered a pizzeria in Austin, Texas at around 7 p.m. and handed an employee a note stating, "Don't say shit, empty the drawer," while flashing a gun in his waistband. But instead of complying with the robber's demand, the Marco's Pizza employee put him in a chokehold while his co-worker dialed 911. Meanwhile, the pizzeria's manager removed the gun from the suspect's possession and attempted to shoot the man, who was later identified as 19-year-old Richard Curtis. The gun wouldn't fire, so the manager pummeled Curtis in the head with the weapon in an attempt to subdue him. Curtis remained combative until the manager retrieved a knife from the kitchen and asked him if he preferred prison or death. Realizing that he was at a major disadvantage, Curtis responded prison and stopped fighting. He waited for the police to come and arrest him and was charged with aggravated burglary. An employee was treated for a head wound, but no serious injuries were reported. Number 16. Ryan Parker. When Good Samaritans noticed a man beating his girlfriend at her home in the English city of Hull in July of 2024, they gave him a taste of his own medicine. 32-year-old Ryan Parker had shown up at the residence in an angry and aggressive state after playing darts at a nearby pub. He began hurling insults at the woman, calling her a waste of space and telling her that she deserved to die. Parker's behavior escalated into physical violence as he slapped his girlfriend so hard that he knocked her to the floor. He proceeded to kick and punch the woman in the head, face, and body, with the front door of the victim's home wide open, threatening to harm anyone who tried to intervene. The woman eventually escaped and ran into the street, screaming for help. Parker followed with a knife in his hand, but was stopped by bystanders who beat him unconscious. He eventually retreated back into the house and was suffering from a black eye, a fractured eye socket, and a broken cheekbone. When police arrived, Parker and the victim had been together for around 14 years, but their relationship had started to deteriorate and was becoming increasingly turbulent at the time of the assault. This was no doubt due in part to Parker's heavy drinking and abusive tendencies, despite his lack of a prior legal record. After receiving medical treatment, Parker was booked into custody on charges relating to the assault. He refused to speak with interrogators, but eventually pleaded guilty to assault causing actual bodily harm, possessing a knife, and using threatening words or behavior. The judge sentenced him to 20 months in prison and imposed a 6-year protective order banning him from any contact with the victim. Number 15. Kyle Lawson Lauder. While responding to a reported disturbance in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, in August of 2024, officers were approached by several people about a hatchet-wielding, skinny white kid who had been threatening a neighbor. Police recognized the suspect, 23-year-old Kyle Lawson Lauder, from a previous domestic violence incident involving his girlfriend. Video evidence from before the police arrived appeared to show Lauder threatening a black woman and calling her a racial slur. As he walked toward the victim, he could be seen raising a hatchet above his head and making slashing motions with it. At some point, he returned to his home nearby and violently threw the hatchet at his front door. When confronted by law enforcement, the seemingly intoxicated suspect reportedly refused to comply with their orders and was verbally aggressive. He told officers that he was upset with the victim for telling him to stop acting a certain way. Police found the hatchet on Lauder's kitchen counter with blood on the handle, which had come from a hand injury that the suspect had sustained due to his violent behavior. Lauder was charged with aggravated assault or battery of a high nature and remains free on a $40,000 bond amid the ongoing case. Number 14. Truck driver gets trapped. The driver of a jacked-up pickup truck became hopelessly stuck along a dirt road after making the regrettable decision to ignore a woman's advice amid heavy flooding in Kaufman County, Texas, in April of 2024. A video captured by the concerned onlooker showed the truck confidently proceeding into what looked like a deep puddle. After she tried to warn the driver about the danger that lay ahead, suddenly the truck's front end plunged several feet into a deep trench that had been concealed by the water, causing a large splash as the vehicle became immobile. Shortly after the footage went viral, the truck's owner, Jeremiah Davis, took to TikTok with his own version of events. He denied that the onlooker had warned him and even accused her of allowing the incident to happen. Davis explained that he thought the woman and her husband had pulled over to let him pass. In reality, the couple had stopped to test the water's depth and had decided not to drive through it. According to the disgruntled driver, the pair did a poor job of trying to warn him by standing 50 feet away and filming. Seemingly offended by the woman's claim that she had tried to help, he said his son was hurt in the accident and told the couple to go back to California. Number 13. Thoughtless thief sets himself ablaze in an arson gone wrong that was captured on camera. During the summer of 2024, a British vandal accidentally set himself on fire while attempting to torch a corner store in Manchester with two accomplices. Surveillance video showed two of the suspects dousing the floor of the business with gasoline during the early evening while terrified witnesses fled the scene. They then set fire to the shop where two employees rushed to retrieve water. The quick-thinking workers managed to put out the blaze before the entire building became engulfed in flames. One of the suspects inadvertently set fire to himself while committing the crime. He could be seen trying to extinguish the flames while his two accomplices ran away. Despite the shocking display, no major injuries were reported. The store's owner, Zaf, told reporters that he didn't know the arsonists, but that he believed they might be associated with the far right, as the incident occurred during an uptick in politically motivated riots and acts of vandalism. He said he was glad that customers left in time to avoid being hurt and that no one was seriously harmed in the attack despite the nearly $20,000 worth of damage that was done to his business. According to the most recent available updates on the case, the suspects are at large and the incident remains under investigation. Number 12. Mugshotscom Founders. In 2018, the administrators of Mugshots.com were accused of extorting thousands of people by posting their mugshots and arrest information and refusing to take it down unless the person paid them. Over a 3-year period started in 2014, the suspects, Thomas Kesey, Sahar Sarid, Kishore Vidya Bhavnani, and David Uzdan, allegedly extracted more than $2.4 million from an estimated 5,700 victims across the United States. Payments typically ranging between $399 and $500 were made through a separate website called unpublishedarrest.com, which was also owned and run by the suspects. While it's perfectly legal to post someone's mugshot and arrest information, the men were accused of violating various laws by forcing their victims to pay in order to get the content taken down. Those who refused or couldn't afford to pay the fees often faced difficulty finding jobs and housing, along with damage to their social lives and other damaging effects of having the information posted in such a public fashion. According to prosecutors, the suspects refused to remove booking details and photos unless they were paid, even when charges were dropped or an individual was arrested due to mistaken identity or some other unfortunate error. In May of 2018, 2016, then California Attorney General Javier Becerra brought charges against Kisi, Sarid, Bavnani and Uzdan for extortion, money laundering and identity theft. Sarid and Kisi were arrested in South Florida, while Bavnani was apprehended in Pennsylvania and Uzdan was arrested in Connecticut. Following the arrests, Becerra announced plans for the defendants to be extradited to California, where an estimated 175 victims had paid nearly $65,000 in removal fees. Updates have not been forthcoming, leaving the current status of the case unclear. Number 11. Karma, MAGA style. In October of 2024, a boat full of seemingly fake Donald Trump supporters turned up at a rally in Jupiter, Florida, wearing swastika t-shirts and flying neo-Nazi flags. Other attendees were quick to distance themselves from the group, showing their disapproval of the beliefs that they were being advertised. Witnesses also suspected the out-of-place attendees of being infiltrators that had been sent by the left to make Republicans look bad. Footage from the rally showed the racist group shouting "Heil Trump," "White Power," and other offensive statements alluding to white supremacy, along with racial and anti-Semitic slurs. In the video, the neo-Nazis could be seen creeping up behind a vessel filled with attendees who were displaying Trump and American flags. As the neo-Nazis' boat got closer, the MAGA boat slowed down. Then, without warning, the MAGA boat sprayed the neo-Nazis with a surge of water, making it abundantly clear that their presence was unwelcome. Some online commenters speculated about whether the racist boaters were imposters doing dirty work for the Democratic Party, with at least one person voicing skepticism that real neo-Nazis would support Trump due to his support for Israel. Others applauded the MAGA boaters for dousing the neo-Nazis, regardless of their true beliefs or political affiliations, with one social media user writing that they wouldn't have stopped spraying water until the group's boat was filled. Number 10. Polish vandal learns a painful lesson. In September of 2017, a Polish vandal was struck by a car after throwing a brick through the glass window of a business in the city of Lubliniec. CCTV footage of the moments leading up to the incident showed a bystander confronting the large man, who aggressively grabbed the witness by the collar of his shirt. The onlooker then backed away from the scene while pulling his phone out, presumably to call the police. In the video, the suspect could be seen kicking the shattered glass of the window he had just broken, until he noticed the witness making a phone call, at which point he ran out into the street without checking for oncoming traffic. At that very same moment, a red sedan came cruising down the road and hit the vandal, sending him flying off the wood of the vehicle and onto the pavement. The man landed face first on the side of the street and was taken to the hospital with minor injuries. It was reportedly his second time breaking the same shop window in 2 weeks, leading some to conclude that the dose of karma he received was especially well-deserved. Number 9. British rioters' behavior backfires. In August of 2024, chaos and disorder broke out in various cities across the United Kingdom as anti-immigration demonstrators and anti-racism protesters clashed in the streets over their opposing views. The demonstrations turned violent in several places, including the English city of Hull, where protesters vandalized and looted shops, threw bricks, eggs, bottles, and fireworks at police officers, sending several cops to the hospital with injuries. During the face-off between the two groups, anti-immigration demonstrators could be heard yelling, "You're not British anymore," while their adversaries chanted, "Say it loud, say it clear, refugees are welcome here." Footage from the night of chaos showed one far-right protester attempting to headbutt a cop while being placed under arrest, and instead slamming his forehead into a window. The man remained combative as 4 cops wrestled him into submission, after which point he could be seen sitting on the pavement in an obvious state of suffering. In the video, he appeared to be throwing up on the sidewalk as he remained surrounded by officers who seemed somewhat concerned about his well-being. The man was among 25 rioters who were arrested during the protests. Number 8. YouTuber versus bodybuilder. In June of 2024, Twitch streamer Rani Stable Ronaldo decided it would be a fun idea to troll bodybuilder and fitness YouTuber Bradley Martin by stealing his hat. Accompanied by fellow FaZe clan member Nick Lacey, Ronaldo approached Martin at his Zoo Culture gym in Los Angeles and snatched his hat off his head, then put it on. Noticeably upset by the situation, Martin demanded his hat back. When Ronaldo refused to hand it over, Martin slapped him across the face. Ronaldo looked shocked as he immediately handed the hat right back over to Martin, who was accused by many commenters of overreacting to the situation. One TikToker even alleged that Martin was roid raging when he hit Ronaldo. Other social media users remarked that Ronaldo had asked for it by invading the bodybuilder's personal space. Martin received support from at least one other member of the fitness community, with retired British boxer Carl Froch stating in a social media post that the slap was completely justified, adding, "If that was my son getting slapped, I'd thank Bradley for the life lesson." Number 7. Raging Florida woman versus WTF Broard. In July of 2024, YouTuber WTF Broard began filming a face-off between two women who were fighting over a disabled parking spot outside a Publix supermarket in West Palm Beach, Florida. When one of the women realized they were being recorded, she redirected her anger at the content creator, ordering him to erase the footage as she tried to snatch the camera out of his hands. She threatened to punch the influencer, then made good on her word, prompting him to defend himself. At the same time, the camera shifted, only to reveal the woman lying on the pavement. The YouTuber could be heard yelling at her to move and telling her that she couldn't hit him. Unaware that her punch had been captured on camera, the woman threatened to call the police. WTF Broard fully encouraged her to do so, while informing her that her act of aggression had been recorded. In the meantime, the woman the aggressor had been feuding with told her that she had seen everything and called the cops. It's unclear whether any arrests were made. Number 6. Tased in Manchester. In September of 2023, police in the English city of Manchester responded to a late-night brawl outside the AO Arena. Upon arriving at the scene shortly before midnight, officers began working to get the situation under control. As two cops wrestled one man to the ground, another suspect ran up and kicked one of them square in the face. As an onlooker recorded the chaos, the kicker could be seen backing away from the scene as one of the officers tased him, causing him to seize up and collapse onto the ground. By the end of the video, the police were visibly regaining control of the situation, with both men subdued. The suspects, aged 42 and 18 years old, were arrested on suspicion of assaulting an emergency worker. They were both released from custody on bail, pending the outcome of an investigation into the incident. Local authorities condemned the suspect's behavior and voiced their support for the officer who deployed his taser, noting that he had acted in a reasonable manner given the nature of the circumstances he was faced with. Law enforcement appealed to the public for information regarding the events that led up to the incident, but it's unclear whether prosecutors moved forward with the case. Number 5. Clint Butler. 36-year-old Clint Butler was 14 years into a 17-year sentence for robbery and weapon charges at a prison in Birmingham, England, when he decided that he had had his fill of life behind bars. He escaped from the facility in November of 2020 and was still on the run 2 months later when he went to the store with a friend to buy a copy of the newly released Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War video game. The pair caught law enforcement's attention when officers saw them turning around and walking in another direction, as if they were avoiding crossing paths with the police. When one of the officers asked Butler's friend what they were doing out during COVID lockdown, he replied that they were just picking up the video game and that they couldn't just sit around. Police later said that Butler gave them a fake name and became combative when an officer informed him of their intention to run the information. He reportedly began kicking and punching the officers but failed to evade custody and was soon sent back to prison with 2 years tacked onto his sentence for escaping and assaulting the police. Number 4. Dog Taunter's instant regret. In a TikTok video that went viral in June of 2024, a man could be seen taunting a large shepherd-like dog that he seemed to think was locked securely behind a fence. He could be seen pulling at a metal chain on the gate separating him and the canine, ignoring the beware of dogs sign that was posted in plain view. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, the dog vanished from view. The footage showed the man looking around for any sign of the disappeared dog, who exited a nearby open garage door just moments later and charged straight at the bully. The video abruptly ended as the canine jumped up with its mouth open, as if it were ready to bite, and it's unclear what happened next. But the man couldn't have been totally unaware of the dog's ability to escape, because he had previously posted at least one other video of the same shepherd escaping from its enclosure, which only makes his decision to taunt the animal even more confusing. Number 3. Driver disabled during dangerous donuts. In 2023, the driver of a Ford F-150 pickup truck began doing donuts in the middle of a street in Atlanta, Georgia, putting the safety of both fellow drivers and pedestrians at risk. A state trooper responded to the scene with his lights and siren activated, prompting the unruly motorist to speed off. The truck struck several pedestrians as the driver rushed through a crowd, leaving at least one person injured. Determined to disable the dangerous driver, the trooper chased after the truck and engaged a pit maneuver, causing the vehicle to spin out and hit a curb. The officer immediately climbed out of his patrol car and pulled the driver out of the truck, ensuring that they would not get away this time. While the outcome of the case is unclear, authorities used the incident as an opportunity to remind the public of the dangers that come along with being near a reckless driver. When someone does burnouts, they're far more likely to lose control of their car and hit someone or something, even if they're a good driver. The Georgia State Patrol urged people to remain in their car if they find themselves near someone who's doing donuts, while encouraging pedestrians to immediately get as far away from the scene as possible. Today's topic was requested by Skylar Fulton 1314 and Dio Odinson. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Minibus v merging car. While driving along a busy road in September of 2024, a minibus driver in the Russian city of Voronezh sped up in an attempt to stop another car from merging in front of them, with disastrous results. Dashcam footage from a nearby vehicle showed the minibus and a white Skoda sedan driving alongside one another for a while before the driver of the Skoda began moving in front of the minibus. Apparently angered by the driver's attempt to merge in front of it, the motorist behind the wheel of the minibus sped up in an attempt to cut the vehicle off. The decision backfired as the minibus crashed into the Skoda, then rolled and landed on top of the car. Both drivers reportedly walked away from the scene uninjured. If these cases of instant karma weren't satisfying enough for you, then get a load of the world's worst bankers getting put behind bars. After number 1, we've got our previous release of When Bankers Go Wrong coming up for those of you who haven't seen it yet. Number 1. Dutch Scooter. In a video clip that appeared on the internet in July of 2024, a man on a scooter could be seen driving into parked bikes in the Netherlands. He was either a really bad driver or he was doing it on purpose, but either way, it wasn't long before he experienced a helping of karma for his recklessness. As the man drove away from the bicycles in the footage, he collided with the front end of a sedan, sending both him and his scooter onto the pavement. As the car continued driving, he slowly stood up, indicating that he was feeling the impact of the crash regardless of whether or not he was seriously injured. It's unclear what happened after that, leaving one to wonder if the incident served as a lesson learned regarding his own conduct behind the wheel. Number 8. Zahaid Nasim. In May of 2018, friends of British woman Christina Abbott's became concerned when she didn't turn up for her 29th birthday party. Local police went to her residence in Crawley, West Sussex, and used a battering ram to break down her front door. Abbott's lifeless body was found naked on her bed, and it would later be determined that she'd succumbed to head trauma and manual strangulation. On the couch, the police found a bathrobe-clad man, subsequently identified as 47-year-old banker Zahaid Nasim. As shown by body cam footage, he appeared to be unconscious, but a police officer and a paramedic noted that he could have been feigning his condition. He kept up the alleged act for roughly 2.5 hours before he started speaking to law enforcement in the hospital. When asked about Abbott's death, Nasim claimed he didn't remember anything and told officers, "I'm not some hyper-high-functioning psychopath creating a story for you, a la Silence of the Lambs." An investigation revealed that Abbott's, who told friends and family she was working in IT, had been offering escort services online under the alias Tilly Pexton. She and Nasim had met on several occasions, and they'd been captured by CCTV kissing in a supermarket leading up to Abbott's death. An examination revealed that at some point during the drug and alcohol-fueled night, She'd been struck in the head 13 times with a kitchen pestle before being fatally strangled. Nasim would eventually admit to have hit her, but claimed it had been in self-defense. He'd allegedly become fearful and overtaken by a red mist in the midst of a consensual game in which Abbots was strangling him. Multiple defensive wounds on the victim's body contradicted his version of events. He was ultimately found guilty of murder and jailed for at least 19 years. Number 7. Neil Elbec. In November of 2008, millionaire banker Neil Elbec got into an argument with his wife Kate at their home in Enfield, North London. Elbec, then in his mid-40s, had been secretly monitoring his wife's phone calls and reading her texts. He discovered that she'd been having an affair with their son's tennis coach, while also maintaining close relationships with the chef at the Ritz and a childhood sweetheart. Elbec had also reportedly been seeing someone else during the course of their tumultuous 14-year marriage. The HSBC banker knew a divorce was imminent, but was allegedly willing to go to any lengths to prevent it. A row erupted when Kate finally asked that they separate. The argument turned into nearly an hour-long physical altercation, during the course of which Elbec inflicted 43 separate injuries on his wife, 18 of which were to the face. He then went out to pick up their daughter from school, and when the child asked where her mother was, Elbec replied she'd gone shopping. In reality, she'd succumbed to pressure which he'd applied to her neck for a period of 20 seconds to 2 minutes. In the ensuing trial, a jury accepted that Elbec hadn't meant to kill his wife, but he was jailed for 8 years for manslaughter. As of the latest updates on the case, the former banker had been released from prison, and he returned to the home in which he'd killed his wife, while reportedly trying to resume his relationship with their teenage son and daughter. Number 6. David Fontana. In March of 2022, a passerby found a mutilated human hand with glitter nail polish on it off a mountain road in Brescia, a province roughly 2 hours outside of Milan, Italy. The authorities were called, and over a dozen more body parts were discovered in scattered garbage bags. The remains were confirmed as a woman's, but she couldn't be identified, as her face had been burned. The police released a description of her multiple tattoos, several of which were intact. The victim was eventually identified as 26-year-old adult film actress and OnlyFans model Carol Maltese, who performed as Charlotte Angie. During the investigation, the police were approached by banker David Fontana, who lived next door to the victim in Rescaldina. He offered information about her disappearance which directly contradicted what the police had learned. 43-year-old Fontana was arrested as investigators deemed his report suspicious. The authorities searched his home and found a large freezer, the same type of bags used to dispose of Maltese's body, as well as incriminating DNA evidence. Additionally, earlier in March, cameras had captured Fontana driving the victim's car. He ultimately broke down, admitted to have killed her on January the 10th or 11th. He kept paying her rent and used her phone to message those who knew her to maintain the illusion she was still alive. As per Fontana's testimony, he and Maltese had arranged to make 2 adult films together, the second of which was more violent. The woman was handcuffed to a stripper pole naked and with a bag over her head. Fontana then started tapping her legs with a hammer, progressively hitting her harder as he worked his way up. He then forcefully struck her in the head multiple times until she was on the verge of death. "I don't know why I did it," Fontana reportedly told investigators, adding that in an act of kindness, he then removed the bag from Maltese's head and slit her throat with a kitchen knife. He cut her body up and kept it in his freezer, but disposed of the remains upon learning the police was looking for her. Fontana was consequently charged with aggravated first-degree homicide, dismemberment, and concealing a corpse. Number 5. Stephen Irving Saunders. Florida banker Stephen Irving Saunders was arrested by Hillsborough County Police in December of 2021 for punching a female teenager in the face during a road rage incident. The victim had allegedly cut off Saunders' custom Porsche 911 on Florida Avenue North in Tampa. While they were stopped at a red light, the banker got out of the convertible and approached her vehicle, yelling out a barrage of profanities. He then reached into the unnamed victim's open driver's side window and struck her in the jaw with a closed fist. In the investigation that followed, the teenager easily identified his custom-painted Porsche and then recognized Saunders when presented with a picture of his driver's license. He was taken into custody and charged with burglary of a conveyance with assault or battery, which Hillsborough County court systems view as a felony punishable by life. As of the latest information released to the media, Saunders had pleaded not guilty to the charge and was released on a $15,000 bond. Number 4. David Pomfret. Barclays executive David Pomfret was jailed for life, with a minimum of 20 years served after being convicted of murdering his wife, Anne-Marie, on November 2nd of 2018. The banker, then in his early 50s, had attacked the woman at the stables where they kept horses, near their home in Winwick, Cheshire, England. He used a crowbar to strike 49-year-old Anne-Marie over 30 times, primarily focusing on her head, as she fruitlessly cowered and tried to defend herself. David then left her to die in a pool of her own blood, cleaned himself up, and disposed of the murder weapon in a pond. While in an apparent distraught state, he called law enforcement and claimed to have found his wife of 22 years with brain and blood everywhere. He maintained the facade of a heartbroken man for months before a key piece of evidence in the form of airborne blood on his socks tied him to the murder. He then changed his story and admitted to killing his wife but denied premeditation, blaming her volatile behavior for what he deemed had been a temporary loss of control on his part. Anne-Marie had a number of health issues, which included being on the autism spectrum, as well as having Asperger's syndrome, and she'd recently had treatment for cancer. Her decline in health reportedly took a heavy toll on David, to whom she'd allegedly been verbally and physically abusive for years. As David later told the authorities, she slapped him and called him names when he went to the stables to retrieve some tools. He then snapped and attacked her with the crowbar. During the ensuing trial, David was called an accomplished liar and an accomplished actor by the prosecution, leading up to the pronouncement of his mandatory 20-year sentence. Number 3. Robert S. An investment banker only identified as Robert S. by Swiss authorities was arrested on suspicion of murder in September of 2014. The banker, then in his late 40s, was accused of strangling a high-class escort to death at the 5-star Dolder Grand Hotel near Zurich on September the 16th. He then moved the victim's body, and about a week after the alleged murder, it was found in Robert's home in the town of Kuznacht. He'd stuffed the remains in a suitcase and kept them in a wine fridge in his cellar. The 25-year-old victim's identity was protected by Swiss privacy laws, but she worked under the aliases Ona, Deborah, and Kathleen. She had trained to become a nurse in her native Poland and kept regular contact with her family, who'd initially raised the alarm about her disappearance. Robert admitted to her killing but denied premeditation, claiming it had occurred in the spur of the moment. He claimed that he and his victim had actually been in a relationship and that she wanted to move in together. As per his account, he decided to remain with his existing partner, and an argument ensued when Kathleen demanded he pay her off. He told the court, "I never intended to kill this woman. I just wanted her to be quiet." Prosecutors argued that for months, the banker had been paying Kathleen for intercourse, and it was he who wanted a relationship with her before committing the murder, fearing rejection. Robert was eventually sentenced to 17 years in prison. Number 1. Rorick S. A Cambridge-educated banker was labeled sadistic and psychopathic by a judge in a Hong Kong court upon being convicted of brutally murdering 2 escorts. Rorick S. had worked for Bank of America Merrill Lynch's London office before moving to its Hong Kong branch in 2013. By that point, his life had reportedly spiraled out of control due to his addiction to violent adult films, drugs, and escort services. On the morning of November the 1st of 2014, he called the police 3 times from his luxurious 1-bedroom apartment at the J residence in Wan Chai, claiming that something happened. 30-year-old Saneng Mujasai, also known as Jessie Lorena, was found by officers clinging to life while lying naked on the floor. The woman, originally from Indonesia, had sustained knife wounds to her neck, throat, and buttocks. She was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. Hong Kong police then discovered the badly decomposed body of 23-year-old Sumati Ningsai, also from Indonesia. stuffed in a black suitcase on the apartment's balcony. Her remains were wrapped in towels while her arms and legs were bound. During the ensuing trial, the jury was shown gruesome photos and videos taken from Jutting's iPhone. In addition to scenes of horrific abuse and violence, they also contained rambling monologues from Jutting, including his self-confession. Ningish, the first victim, had been murdered after 3 days of prolonged torture, carried out at knife point by the banker. After putting her body in the suitcase, he made preparations for a second killing, claiming he wanted to be as inhumane as possible. He found Mugshotscom and offered her around $250 for intercourse. Upon arriving at the apartment and realizing the danger in which she found herself, the woman began to scream. Jutting threatened her with a knife, but when she continued to struggle, stabbed her to death. The victims' families asked for the death penalty, but Jutting, who had been found to suffer from narcissistic personality disorder, was ultimately sentenced to life imprisonment. Thanks for watching. Hypothetically, if someone murdered you and you could pick his sentence, would you rather see that person face the death penalty or spend the rest of their life in isolation at a supermax prison? Let us know in the comments section below.